Officer, what is this? I don't understand.
Ma'am, please remain calm. You're being detained.
But why? I've done nothing wrong.
I have a warrant. We'll sort it out at the station. This can't be real. This is a mistake.
We'll get this cleared up. Stay with me.
Mom, we're here! Hold it right there. Officer, we have legal documents. She's coming with us. Step back. Step back. This is official police business. She needs her family. We have family. We have minutes. We have on the power of attorney. Please.
By the time Officer Daniel Brooks fastened the cuffs around my wrists, I was still sitting in my wheelchair on the front lawn of the house I had paid for 30 years ago. My mother hasn't lived here in months, my daughter Danielle told him softly. She gets confused. Behind her, Ethan stood in my doorway wearing the worried face of a man hiding something. I could see my curtains through the window, my family photos, my life. Then a dark SUV stopped at the curb. Micah and Isaiah stepped out carrying a sealed folder. Officer Micah said, his voice shaking, "Please don't take her. We have proof this house was never hers to lose. If this story has already touched your heart, please like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Would you believe your own child could do something like this?" 25 years earlier, I never imagined that opening my front door to two frightened boys would change every part of my life. Back then, I was 38 years old, newly dependent on a wheelchair after the accident that had taken so much from me. Before that crash, I had been the kind of woman who carried groceries in both arms, climbed ladders to clean ceiling fans, and worked overtime without thinking twice. But after a drunk driver ran a red light and struck my car, my legs never fully recovered. I learned how to live differently. I learned how to reach the high shelves with a grabber tool. I learned which sidewalks in Columbus had broken concrete that could trap my wheels. I learned how to smile when strangers spoke too loudly to me, as if losing the use of my legs had somehow taken my mind too. Most of all, I learned how to keep going for my daughter. Danielle was 14 then. She had thick braids down her back, sharp brown eyes, and a habit of slamming doors whenever life disappointed her. She missed her father, though she never said it directly. Her dad had walked out when she was 6, leaving behind unpaid bills, a nearly empty checking account, and a child who spent years wondering why she had not been enough for him to stay. I worked part-time at the East Side Community Center, answering phones, organizing meal deliveries, and helping seniors fill out forms for housing assistance. The job did not pay much, but it gave me purpose. It reminded me that people could still be useful even after life knocked them down. Every afternoon, Danielle came home from school, dropped her backpack beside the kitchen table, and complained about homework while I tried to stretch our groceries into something that felt like a real dinner. Some nights it was chicken rice and canned green beans. Other nights it was grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. We did not have much, but I tried to make our home feel steady. Then my best friend Renee Carter died. Renee and I had known each other since high school. She was loud, funny, stubborn, and always the first one to show up when someone needed help. When I was recovering from the accident, she had driven Danielle to school, brought me casseroles, and sat beside my hospital bed when I was too embarrassed to let anyone see me cry. She had twin boys, Micah and Isaiah. They were 10 years old when Renee died suddenly from a stroke. One day, she was calling me to complain about her supervisor at the grocery warehouse. The next day, I was standing in a hospital hallway while two boys sat side by side in plastic chairs, holding hands and staring at the floor. Micah was the quieter one. He had a serious face and the kind of eyes that made you think he was always listening, even when nobody expected him to. Isaiah was more restless. He kept tapping his sneaker against the tile, asking when his mother was coming back, then looking ashamed every time no one answered. Renee had no parents left. Her brothers lived out of state, and had their own struggles. There were conversations about foster care paperwork, emergency placement, and court dates. I remember looking at those boys and thinking about how terrified they must have been. Then I thought about Danielle. I thought about how she had already lost one parent in the ways that mattered. I could not bear the idea of those boys losing everything too, so I brought them home. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Just a few weeks, I said, until the court figured things out, until family stepped forward, until someone else could take them. But no one came, and slowly, without anyone announcing it, they became ours. The first night, they slept in the living room because I only had 2 bedrooms. Danielle had her room. I had mine. The boys shared the pull-out couch under a quilt Renee had once given me for Christmas. Micah barely spoke. Isaiah cried after midnight, trying to do it quietly so nobody would hear. I wheeled myself into the living room and sat beside him. "You can cry," I told him. He shook his head. "My mom said boys aren't supposed to cry." I looked at him for a long moment. "Your mom was wrong about that," I said softly. "In this house, people can cry when their hearts hurt." That was the first time he looked at me like he believed I might be safe. The months after that were not easy. Our house felt too small. Our grocery bills doubled. The water bill climbed. Laundry became a mountain that never disappeared. I worked extra hours at the community center whenever I could, taking on paperwork in the evenings from home. Danielle helped sometimes. She would carry baskets of clothes upstairs, push the boys toward the bathroom when they argued over who got to shower first, and sit beside me at the table while I tried to make sense of legal forms. But I also started noticing the way she watched me. When I hugged Micah after he got an A on a spelling test, Danielle looked away. When Isaiah got sick and I stayed up most of the night, checking his temperature, she barely spoke to me the next morning. When I used my small savings to buy both boys winter coats, Danielle stared at the receipt on the kitchen counter for a long time. "You never bought me the boots I wanted," she said. My chest tightened. "Danielle, honey, those boots cost almost $100. But you bought them coats. They needed coats." So do I. It was not really about the boots. I understand that now. At the time, I thought she was being a teenager. Moody, sensitive, overwhelmed. I told her we would figure it out next payday, but she did not look convinced. The truth is, I was tired. I was tired from working, tired from pain, tired from pretending. I was not scared about the future. I was trying to hold together a home for 3 children while learning to live in a body that no longer moved the way it once had. I did not see every hurt forming inside my daughter. I did not hear every silent question behind her anger. Did she think I loved them more? Did she think there was no longer room for her? Did she believe I had chosen them over her? I wish I could say I noticed sooner. I wish I had sat her down, held her hands, and told her that love was not a pie with only so many slices. That loving Micah and Isaiah did not mean loving her less. But life was loud then, and pain has a way of making people miss the quiet things. Micah and Isaiah, meanwhile, did everything they could not to become a burden. They washed dishes without being asked. They folded laundry. They studied hard. They saved their lunch money to buy Danielle a birthday card one year because they knew she was angry with them and still wanted her to feel included. Micah started calling me Mama Lauren by the end of the first year. Isaiah followed a few months later. Danielle never said anything when she heard it, but I saw her face change. Just for a second. A small tightening around her mouth. A look I did not understand until many years later. By the time the adoption papers were finalized, I had already made a decision no one else knew about. I would protect that house. Not just for me, for all of them. Because I had learned something. After the accident, people see a woman in a wheelchair and assume she is vulnerable. They assume they can pressure her, speak over her, make decisions for her. I promised myself that no matter what happened, nobody would ever be able to take our home without a fight. and that promise would one day become the reason my daughter's plan fell apart. Years passed faster than I ever expected. Micah and Isaiah grew into men who made me proud in ways I could hardly explain. Micah became a real estate attorney, the kind of man who read every line before he signed anything and remembered details most people missed. Isaiah built a digital security company from the ground up. He was always the one fixing my phone, checking my computer, or reminding me not to click on suspicious emails. They never forgot where they came from. They called every Sunday. They came for birthdays, holidays, and ordinary weekends when they knew I might need help changing a smoke detector battery or clearing snow from the ramp. They called me Mama Lauren, even when they were grown men with busy lives and responsibilities of their own. Danielle, on the other hand, became harder to reach. I told myself that was normal. She got married. She had a son. She worked different jobs over the years and seemed to be constantly trying to get ahead. Sometimes she would call me twice in 1 week. Other times I would go months without hearing from her. Unless I was the one who picked up the phone first. Whenever I asked if something was wrong, she always had the same answer. Nothing's wrong, Mom. Life is just busy. And because I loved her, I accepted it. I did not want to be one of those mothers who demanded more than her adult child could give. I did not want Danielle to think I was trying to pull her away from her husband or her own family. So I learned to settle for short calls, rushed holiday visits, and photographs of my grandson that arrived weeks after they were taken. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, Danielle called me crying. I was in the kitchen, trying to reach a mug from the second shelf with my grabber tool, when I saw her name flash across my phone. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking. "Can we come over?" I set the mug down carefully. "Of course." "What happened?" There was a pause. Then I heard Ethan in the background speaking too quietly for me to understand. "Ethan lost a major contract," Danielle said at last. "The company he was working with pulled out at the last minute. We're behind on rent, and we need somewhere to stay for a little while." I closed my eyes. For a few seconds, I saw Danielle at 14 years old standing in the kitchen with tears in her eyes because she thought I had bought winter coats for Micah and Isaiah instead of the boots she wanted. Then I saw her as my grown daughter crying into the phone. "Come over," I told her. "Both of you." They arrived that evening with 2 suitcases, several plastic storage bins, and more tension than they tried to admit. Danielle hugged me hard when she came through the front door. "Thank you," she whispered. "I promise this is temporary." Ethan shook my hand and gave me a careful smile. "I'll make myself useful, Ms. Scott," he said. "I won't let you regret this." I believed them. At first, everything seemed fine. Danielle cleaned the kitchen after dinner. She picked up my prescriptions from the pharmacy. She offered to push my wheelchair when we went to the grocery store, even though I usually preferred to move at my own pace. In front of the neighbors, she was almost too attentive. "Oh, Mom doesn't need to worry about that anymore," she would say with a bright smile. "I'm taking care of everything." At the time, I thought she was trying to make up for lost time. Ethan fixed a loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen. He repaired the handle on the back door. He even replaced a broken porch light that had been flickering for months. I thanked him. I told myself maybe this was a blessing in disguise. Maybe having them there would bring us closer again. But small things began changing. The first thing I noticed was the mail. For years, my mail had been placed in a wooden basket on the kitchen table. Bills, letters, insurance notices, grocery coupons, birthday cards. I liked going through it myself, even if I needed my reading glasses and extra time. But after Danielle moved in, the basket was usually empty. At first, she said she had simply sorted everything. I threw away the junk she told me. "You don't need all those advertisements." That seemed reasonable. Then I noticed my bank statement had not arrived. When I asked about it, Danielle said she had already put it somewhere safe. "Mom, you don't need to stress about every little paper," she said. "I'm helping you." A week later, I asked about a letter from my insurance company. Danielle sighed as if I had asked her something ridiculous. I handled it, she said. What does that mean? It means I called them. Everything is fine, but she did not tell me what the letter said. The next change was my phone. Danielle started answering calls for me before I could reach it. Sometimes I would hear it ring from across the room, and before I had the chance to roll over, she would pick it up. Lauren can't talk right now, she would say. Can I take a message? At first, I thought she was being helpful. Then I noticed she did it even when I was sitting right beside her. One afternoon, Micah called while I was in the living room watching an old movie. Danielle picked up my phone from the coffee table and stepped into the kitchen before I could say a word. When she came back, she said Micah just wanted to check in. I told him you were resting. I wasn't resting, I said. She looked at me for a moment, then smiled. You know what I mean. That smile stayed with me long after she walked away. It was not cruel. Not exactly. But it was not warm either. It was the kind of smile people use when they have already decided they know what is best for you. Soon, Danielle began handling my medical appointments too. She told me she had called my doctor's office to reschedule a visit because the time was inconvenient. She changed the delivery schedule for my medications. She started asking questions about my mobility, my pain levels, and how often I needed help getting in and out of the shower. At first I answered. Then I began to wonder why she needed so much information. One evening while I was in the hallway, I heard Danielle speaking on the phone in the kitchen. I was not trying to listen. I was simply rolling past when I heard her laugh softly. No, we're staying with my mom for now, she said. It's actually working out pretty well. There was a pause. Then she said something that made my hands tighten around the wheels of my chair. Yes, our place has more space than the apartment anyway. Our place. Not Mom's house, not my mother's home. Our place. I stopped in the hallway. For a moment, I wondered if I had heard her wrong. Maybe she meant the house where they were staying. Maybe it was just a careless phrase. Maybe I was being too sensitive. But something inside me shifted. It was small at first, barely more than a whisper. Still, once you have lived long enough, you learn not to ignore certain feelings. You learn that fear does not always arrive shouting. Sometimes it comes quietly. Sometimes it hides inside a word. The first real sign that something was wrong came in an envelope Danielle thought I would never see. It was a Thursday afternoon. Rain tapped softly against the kitchen window, and the house smelled like the pot roast Danielle had put in the slow cooker before leaving for what she said was a job interview. I had spent most of the day in the living room, sorting through old photographs. There were pictures of Danielle at 5 years old wearing a pink birthday crown, pictures of Micah and Isaiah in oversized baseball uniforms, pictures of all three of them sitting on the front porch with melting popsicles running down their wrists. For a little while, I let myself feel grateful. Maybe I had been too suspicious. Maybe the changes in the house were just the result of having 2 extra adults living there. Maybe Danielle was trying to help in the only way she knew how. Then I went into the kitchen for water. I opened the drawer beside the stove looking for a set of measuring spoons. Instead, I found a cream-colored envelope tucked beneath a stack of takeout menus. The return address read, Harrison and Wells Property Valuation. My hands froze. For several seconds, I simply stared at it. I knew that company. They handled appraisals for homes in my neighborhood. A few years earlier, when the house across the street sold, the elderly couple who lived there had hired Harrison and Wells before putting it on the market. I slipped my finger beneath the flap. Inside was a printed appointment confirmation. Property inspection scheduled for Tuesday, 10 a.m. The address listed was mine. At the bottom, under the contact name, was Danielle's. My throat tightened so quickly that I had trouble swallowing. I read it 3 times, hoping I had misunderstood, hoping it was some kind of mistake. Maybe Danielle was helping a neighbor. Maybe the company had entered the wrong address. But there was no mistake. The house had been scheduled for an appraisal. My house. The house I had paid for through long years of working at the community center, saving every extra dollar, refusing to take vacations, refusing to buy anything I did not need. The house where Danielle took her first steps. The house where Micah and Isaiah had learned how to ride bikes. The house where I had survived more than one hard season of life. I heard the front door open. Quickly, I folded the paper and slipped it into the side pocket of my wheelchair. Danielle entered carrying a grocery bag. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore the same calm expression she had been wearing more and more often lately. "You're up," she said. "I thought you were resting." "I was," I replied. She began unloading groceries, her back turned to me. Milk, eggs, bread, a bag of apples. I watched her for a moment, trying to find the right words. "Danielle." I said, "Why is someone coming to appraise this house next Tuesday?" Her hands stopped, not for long, just long enough for me to know she had heard me. Then she continued placing things in the refrigerator. "What are you talking about?" "I found a letter from Harrison and Wells." She closed the refrigerator door and turned toward me. Her face did not look frightened. It looked annoyed. "Mom, that was nothing. Nothing, I was just getting information. Information about what." Danielle sighed deeply, as if I had asked her to explain something obvious to a child. "About options." "Options for what?" She leaned against the counter. "For your future. For all of our futures." Something cold moved through me. "My future is right here," I said. "In this house." "Mom, you're 63. You use a wheelchair. You live in a house with stairs, an old bathroom, and a kitchen that was designed before people thought about accessibility. You could be somewhere safer." "I am safe here. You could be in a place where people are trained to help you. I do not need to be put somewhere." Her eyes narrowed. "No one said put. You have been talking about assisted living for weeks. Because I care about you." "No," I said quietly. "You care about controlling me." For the first time, the softness left her face. "After everything I've done since I moved in, that's what you think I look down at my hands?" I hated the way she could make me feel guilty for asking a simple question. "You took my mail," I said. "You answer my phone. You changed my doctor's appointment without telling me. And now you are getting my house appraised. I'm trying to keep things organized. You're trying to make decisions that belong to me." Danielle crossed her arms. "Sometimes people need help making decisions." The room went quiet. I had spent years hearing strangers speak to me in that tone. The tone people used when they looked at my wheelchair before they looked at my face. The tone that suggested I was fragile, confused, or incapable. But hearing it from my own daughter hurt differently. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I began paying closer attention. The mail basket on the kitchen table remained empty, even though I could hear the mailbox lid outside each afternoon. When I asked Danielle whether anything had arrived, she always had an answer ready. "Just coupons. Nothing important. I already handled it." A few days later, I asked about my property tax statement. The payment was due soon, and I had always paid it myself. Danielle smiled. "I took care of it." "What do you mean you took care of it?" "I made sure it was being handled." "By who, Mom? Please stop worrying." I stared at her. She never answered the question. Ethan was becoming less careful too. One night at dinner, he mentioned that a house 2 streets over had sold for nearly twice what it had been worth 10 years ago. "People are paying crazy money around here," he said, cutting into his chicken, "especially for older homes with big lots." Danielle looked at him sharply. "Ethan, what he asked, I'm just saying." I placed my fork down. "Why are we discussing property values?" Ethan smiled in that slow, practiced way of his. "We're not. I'm just making conversation." But his eyes flicked toward Danielle, and hers dropped to her plate. The following week, Danielle brought up assisted living again. This time, she showed me pictures on her phone. "They have activities," she said. "They have nurses around the clock. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." "Would I be able to keep my home?" She hesitated. "Mom, that's not the point." "It is the point. You could sell it and have money for your care." "My care is not your decision." Her mouth tightened. You know what? You never listen. You think you can do everything alone. I have done everything alone for most of my life, and maybe that's the problem. The words landed harder than she intended, or maybe exactly as hard as she intended. I rolled away before she could see tears rise in my eyes. That evening, I checked the drawer beside the stove again. The appraisal letter was gone, but I had already taken a picture of it with my phone. I did not know then that Danielle's plan was much bigger than selling a house. I only knew that the daughter I had trusted enough to welcome into my home was beginning to look at me the way a stranger looks at an obstacle, and somewhere beneath the fear, something else began to wake up inside me. Not anger. Not yet. It was instinct. The same instinct that had kept me alive after my accident. The same instinct that had taught me to protect what belonged to me. The next Sunday, Micah called before breakfast. Danielle was in the shower and Ethan had gone out to pick up coffee, so, for once, my phone rang where I could reach it. I answered on the second ring. Good morning, Mama, Lauren, Micah said. Hearing his voice made my chest loosen. Good morning, baby. I could hear traffic in the background. Micah lived on the other side of Columbus now in a townhouse near the courthouse. He had a busy career, a long commute, and more responsibility than any child should have had to carry at 35, but he still called every Sunday. Sometimes twice. How are you feeling? He asked. I'm all right. There was a pause. Not a long one, but I knew Micah well enough to understand it. You sound tired, he said. I didn't sleep much. Why not? I looked toward the hallway. Even though Danielle was upstairs, I lowered my voice. Nothing serious. Mama Lauren. The way he said it made me close my eyes. Micah had always been the child who noticed things. When he was 10, he could tell I was in pain by the way I held my shoulders. When he was 16, he knew I had not eaten enough just by looking at my face. You don't have to worry about me, I said. I'm not asking because I want to worry. I'm asking because I know you. For a moment, I considered telling him everything. The missing mail, the appraisal letter, the way Danielle had started speaking to me as if I were already gone. But I could not bring myself to say it. Danielle was still my daughter. And once you say something out loud, it becomes real. In a way you cannot take back. Danielle and Ethan are just helping around the house, I said. There's been some adjustment. Has Danielle been touching your paperwork? My fingers tightened around the phone. Why would you ask that? Because you sound careful, he said, like someone is standing over your shoulder. I swallowed. She's been trying to help organize things. Have you signed anything? No. Have you been asked to sign anything? Not yet. Good, he said firmly. Don't sign a single piece of paper without sending me a copy first. Micah, I don't want you to think badly of Danielle. I don't think badly of anybody without a reason. But I want to protect you. Before I could respond, Isaiah's voice came through the speaker. Put me on, he said. Micah laughed. He's been pacing around like a detective ever since I told him you sounded off. I heard that, Isaiah said. I smiled despite myself. Good morning, Isaiah. Morning, Mama Lauren. I need you to answer something honestly. All right. Has Danielle been messing with the cameras? I looked toward the living room ceiling. The old security system had been installed years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. Isaiah had upgraded it over time, adding motion sensors, a doorbell camera, and small indoor cameras near the entryway and back door. I don't know, I said. Why? Because some of the alerts stopped syncing to the cloud 2 weeks ago. My heart began to beat harder. Could that just be a technical issue? It could, he said. But I checked remotely. The system was manually disconnected. By who? I can't see that yet. But someone in the house had access to the main control panel. I thought of Ethan fixing the cabinet hinge. I thought of Danielle organizing drawers. I thought of the way they both sometimes disappeared into the hall closet where the control panel was mounted. Maybe Ethan bumped something, I said weakly. Isaiah went quiet. Then he said, Mama Lauren, I need you to listen to me. You do not have to accuse anybody. You do not have to start a fight, but keep your important documents where no one can reach them. I already moved a few things into my wheelchair bag. Good, Micah said. And I want you to remember something. His voice changed. It became calm and precise, the way it did when he was explaining legal matters. That house isn't sitting there unprotected. I knew exactly what he meant. 20 years earlier, when Micah and Isaiah were still teenagers, I had met with an estate planning attorney. I had not told many people about it. I did not want my children to think I was planning for the worst, but I had learned enough about life to know that people could be pressured, manipulated, or taken advantage of, especially if they were disabled, elderly, sick, or alone. The attorney had helped me create the Scott Carter Family Trust. The house was placed inside it. I retained the right to live there for the rest of my life. Micah and Isaiah were named as successor trustees if I ever became unable to make decisions, or if anyone tried to force me into something against my will. Danielle had been included in future considerations, but not as someone who could sell mortgage or take ownership of the house while I was alive. At the time, I had done it to protect everyone. I never imagined I might need protection from my own daughter. I remember I said quietly, "Good," Micah said, "because Danielle cannot legally sell that property without the trust's approval. She cannot transfer it. She cannot use it as collateral, and she cannot make decisions for you. Just because she is your daughter." My eyes filled with tears. "Please don't make this bigger than it is," I whispered. Mama Lauren Isaiah said gently, "We are not making it bigger. We are making sure nobody else does." After the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. The house felt different. The walls were the same. The furniture was the same. The framed photographs still hung in the hallway. But something had changed. I no longer saw Danielle and Ethan as family members needing temporary help. I saw them as people who might be watching, waiting, measuring. That afternoon, Danielle came downstairs wearing a cheerful expression. "I was thinking," she said, "maybe we should have someone look at the plumbing. The bathroom pipe has been acting strange." "Has it?" "Yes." I smelled something under the sink. "I haven't smelled anything. You may not notice it yet." The way she said it made me uneasy. Then she sat beside me on the couch and took my hand. "Mom, if the house needs repairs, we may need to find you somewhere comfortable for a few weeks." I looked directly into her eyes. "No." Her smile faded. "We haven't even talked about it. We are talking about it now. And the answer is no." For a second, Danielle's face became hard. Then she squeezed my hand. "You always were stubborn." I smiled faintly. "Yes," I said. "That has kept me alive." The plumbing emergency began 3 days later. At least, that was what Danielle called it. I woke early that morning to the sound of someone banging beneath the kitchen sink. I rolled down the hall and found Ethan kneeling on the floor with a flashlight. "There you are," he said. "I was hoping you'd stay in bed." "What happened?" He sat back on his heels. "Pipe burst under here. Water's leaking behind the cabinets." I looked at the floor. There was no water, no puddle, no damp towel, no smell. "Where is it leaking?" "Behind the wall," he said quickly. "You can't see it." Danielle entered from the laundry room, already dressed, already holding her phone. "I called a plumber," she said. "He said it could be serious." "Did he come look at it?" "Not yet, but he knows what it sounds like." I stared at both of them. The explanation made no sense, but I was tired of feeling like I was the only person in the room who noticed that. Later that afternoon, a man arrived in a uniform with no company logo. He spent less than 15 minutes in the kitchen, barely looking at anything. Then he told Danielle the house might need extensive work. "Could be mold," he said. "Could be structural damage." I watched him walk out without giving me any paperwork. Danielle turned to me with concern painted across her face. "Mom, you can't stay here while this is going on. I can stay in my room." "No. There could be water damage, air quality issues. You need to be somewhere safe." Where I found a temporary care facility just for a couple of weeks. My stomach tightened. "I don't need a care facility. You need somewhere accessible." My home is accessible, not if they start tearing up the kitchen and bathroom. I looked at Ethan. He did not meet my eyes. For the next 2 days, Danielle kept pushing. She showed me pictures of the facility. Clean hallways, a dining room, a garden, a cheerful woman in scrubs standing beside a wheelchair. "It's not permanent," Danielle said. "You'll be back before you know it." I wanted to believe her. That was the hardest part. No matter how many warning signs appeared, some part of me still wanted to believe that my daughter would never truly betray me. So I agreed. On Monday morning, Danielle packed 2 small suitcases for me. I noticed she did not pack my photo albums. She did not pack my important papers. She did not pack the blue quilt Renee had given me years ago. When I asked about those things, she smiled. "You won't need them for a couple weeks." At the care facility, the staff were kind enough, but I knew I did not belong there. The room was small. The bed was too high, and the air smelled like disinfectant and boiled vegetables. My roommate, a sweet woman named Mrs. Talbot, kept calling me by her sister's name. I tried not to mind. Danielle visited once during the first week. She brought flowers and a bag of sugar-free cookies. "You look good," she said. "I want to go home." "Not yet. They're still working." "Can I speak to the plumber?" She blinked. "Why?" "Because I want to know what is happening to my house." "Mom, please. You need to stop stressing yourself out. I need information. You need rest." Her voice was tight. When she left, I cried quietly into my pillow. The second week passed, then the third. Danielle stopped answering every call. Sometimes she would text busy, "We'll call later," but later rarely came. One afternoon, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, who had lived next door for nearly 20 years. When she picked up, she sounded surprised. "Lauren, honey, I thought you moved? What Danielle told us, you decided assisted living was better. She said you didn't want visitors because you needed peace." My hands went cold. "Has anyone been at my house?" "A moving truck came last week," she said, "and a storage company. I thought Danielle was helping you relocate." I could barely breathe. That night, I asked the facility director whether Danielle had been paying my bill. The woman looked uncomfortable. "Your daughter said she was handling it," she replied. "Has she paid?" After a long pause, she said, "There is an outstanding balance." The next morning, I demanded to leave. Danielle did not answer when I called her. So I called a wheelchair-accessible taxi service myself. When I arrived at my house, the first thing I saw was the new lock. The brass knob I had touched every day for 30 years had been replaced with a silver keypad lock. I rolled closer. My name was no longer on the mailbox. The little plaque that once read Lauren Scott had been removed. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I rang again. Then I saw the curtain shift. Danielle was standing inside. For a moment, I thought she would open the door. Instead, she stood there staring at me through the glass. And then she shook her head. "Danielle?" I called through the door. "Open it." She did not move. I could see only part of her face through the narrow space between the curtain and the window frame, but I knew that expression. It was the expression she wore when she had made up her mind and did not want anyone to challenge her. "Danielle, I live here." The lock clicked from the inside, but the door did not open. Her voice came through the wood. "You shouldn't be here." For several seconds, I could not speak. "I shouldn't be where, Mom. Please don't do this." "Do what?" "Mom, what? Oh, come home. You left. I went to a care facility because you said there was a plumbing emergency. You agreed to move. I agreed to stay for 2 weeks. You need to stop acting like this." My heart began to pound. "Open the door." Behind her, I heard Ethan's voice. "Tell her to leave." "Ethan," I said loudly, "this is not your house." The door opened just a few inches, held back by a security chain. Danielle's face looked pale. "You can't come in," she said. "My medication is inside. I can bring it out later. My clothes are inside." "You have clothes. My papers are inside. You don't need them?" I stared at her. You moved my things. I put them in storage. Where? I don't know. You don't know where you put my things? Danielle's eyes flashed. You are making this harder than it needs to be? No, I said, my voice shaking. You are. Ethan stepped behind her. He had always been taller than me, but in that doorway, with his shoulders filling the space behind Danielle, he looked even larger. You need to leave, he said. You're upsetting her. I looked at him in disbelief. Upsetting her, Lauren? He said, using my first name as if we were equals in some business conversation. Danielle is trying to do what's best for everyone. By locking me out, she is trying to protect you. From what? He did not answer. Instead, he took out his phone. If you don't leave, we'll call the police. The threat hit me like cold water. For a moment, I imagined neighbors watching through their windows. I imagined a police car pulling into the driveway. I imagined trying to explain that I was being locked out of my own home while my daughter stood behind a locked door saying I was confused. My dignity felt thinner than paper. Please, I whispered. Just let me get my medicine. Danielle's face softened for half a second. Then Ethan touched her shoulder. She closed the door. I sat there for a long time. The sidewalk was wet from morning rain. My wheelchair wheels were damp. Cars passed at the end of the street, their tires hissing over the pavement. Nobody stopped. Eventually, I called a hotel. Not a nice one. The only place I could find nearby with an accessible room and a vacancy was a small motel off the highway. The carpet smelled old. The bathroom door barely cleared my wheels, and the bed was so low I had trouble transferring into it. But it had a lock, and that was more than I had at my own house. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I kept replaying every conversation I had had with Danielle over the last few months. Her questions about my doctors, her interest in the house, the way she kept taking my mail, the appraisal, the fake plumbing emergency. It was not a mistake. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a plan. Still, even after everything I did not call Micah or Isaiah, I was ashamed. That is the part people do not understand about betrayal. It does not only hurt because someone has wronged you. It hurts because you feel embarrassed for believing in them. I thought of all the times I had defended Danielle when Micah and Isaiah worried about her distance. She's just busy. She has her own life. She loves me in her own way. Now I was sitting alone in a motel room because my daughter had locked me out of my home. Around midnight, I reached beneath the seat of my wheelchair for the small pouch where I kept spare batteries receipts and emergency cash. My fingers touched something hard. A key. I pulled it out slowly. It was a small brass key on a faded blue ribbon. For years I had thought it was lost. It belonged to my safe deposit box at First Franklin Bank. When I created the Scott Carter Family Trust, the attorney had told me to keep the original documents somewhere no one could reach without my permission. I had placed them in that safe deposit box. The original trust papers, the property records, the signed legal instructions. Everything Danielle had probably been hoping I would never find. The next morning, I called Micah. He answered immediately. Mama Lauren. I took a deep breath. Baby, I said I need help. There was silence. Then his voice turned sharp and steady. Tell me where you are. Micah arrived at the motel less than an hour later. Isaiah came 10 minutes after him, still wearing a navy work shirt with the logo of his security company stitched over the pocket. The moment they walked into that small room, I felt something inside me collapse, not because I was weak, because I was finally safe enough to stop pretending I was not hurt. Micah knelt beside my wheelchair. Mama Lauren, he said softly. What happened? I tried to answer, but my voice broke, so Isaiah sat on the edge of the bed, took my hand and said, Start wherever you can. And I did. I told them about the missing mail, the appraisal, the care facility, the lock on the door, the way Danielle had looked at me from behind the curtain and refused to let me inside. I told them about Ethan threatening to call the police. I told them I had found the key. Micah listened without interrupting. Isaiah kept his jaw clenched so tightly, I could see the muscle in his cheek moving. When I finished, Micah stood slowly. "We are going to the bank," he said. At First Franklin Bank, the manager led us into a small private room. I signed the necessary forms, showed my identification, and watched as the employee brought out the metal safe deposit box. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were the documents I had not seen in years. The original Scott Carter Family Trust, a certified copy of the deed transferring my home into the trust, a letter from the estate attorney explaining my lifetime right to live in the home, and a separate page naming Micah and Isaiah as successor trustees if I were ever pressured, coerced, or declared incapable without independent proof. Micah read each page carefully. Then he looked up at me. "Danielle cannot sell the house," he said. "Not legally. Can she throw me out? No. Can she put it in her name? No. What if she forged something?" His face became still. "Then we will prove it." Isaiah opened his laptop at a small table in the bank lobby. Within minutes, he was accessing the remote records from my home security system. "I was right," he said. "The cameras were disabled manually. Can you see who did it? Not yet. But I can see the system was disconnected from the cloud at 10:42 p.m., the night before you left for the care facility." Micah's eyes narrowed. That was not an accident. Isaiah clicked through system logs. "Someone used your administrator password," he said. "I never gave it to Danielle." "You didn't have to," he replied. "She had access to the papers in the house. There's a good chance she found it written somewhere." Then his screen changed. He sat up straighter. "What is it?" I asked. "I can still recover some local recordings," he said. "Not everything, but enough." We spent the afternoon gathering records. Micah requested official property documents from the county recorder's office. By evening, he had identified a newly filed transfer document listing Danielle as the owner of my home. The signature was supposed to be mine, but it was not. Even without being an attorney, I knew that. My signature had a certain curve to it, a small loop at the end of the L, a line beneath my name that I had added since I was young. The signature on the document was stiff, uneven, and wrong. Micah held the copy in front of me. "Mama Lauren, did you sign this? No. Did you meet with a notary? No. Did you give Danielle permission to sign for you? No." His face hardened. "This is forgery." The word made the room feel colder. Forgery. My daughter had not simply taken advantage of me. She had created false documents. She had used my name. She had built an entire lie around the idea that I would be too weak, too scared, or too confused to fight back. Micah made calls from the parking lot. Isaiah continued working on the camera system. By the time the sun went down, he had recovered part of an audio file from the living room. The sound was faint at first. Then Danielle's voice came through. "We need to get Mom out before the sale closes." My breath caught. Ethan answered. "She's not going to just leave. She will if she thinks the house is unsafe. And if she comes back, she won't know what to do. She'll panic." I covered my mouth with my hand. The recording continued. Ethan laughed quietly. "Once the buyer sends the deposit, we'll be fine," Danielle said. "We have to move fast. If Micah gets involved, we're done." The file ended there. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then Isaiah looked at me. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. I needed to hear it, because there are moments when the truth hurts so deeply that it also frees you. All those months, I had been looking for excuses for Danielle. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe she was trying to protect me. But there was no protecting me in that recording. There was only planning. There was only greed. The next morning, I told Micah I wanted to go back to the house. He looked at me carefully. "Are you sure?" "No," I said. "But I am done hiding in motel rooms." Isaiah reached for my wheelchair handles. "Then we go together." I looked down at the trust documents in my lap. For the first time since Danielle locked me out, I did not feel powerless. I felt afraid, but I also felt prepared. And those are not the same thing. When we arrived at my house, Micah parked at the curb while Isaiah helped me down the ramp from the SUV. The sky was gray heavy with rain. My front lawn looked exactly the way it had when I left weeks earlier, except now the grass had grown too high and a small for sale sign stood near the driveway. I stared at it. There was no company name on the sign, only a phone number. Danielle had not even tried to hide what she was doing. Micah took a picture of it. "Do you want me to knock?" Isaiah asked. "No," I said. "I will." I rolled to the front door and pressed the bell. Danielle opened it almost immediately. She was dressed in a cream-colored blouse and dark jeans as if she had expected us. Her eyes went first to me, then to Micah, then to Isaiah. The color drained from her face. "Mom," she said barely above a whisper. "Move," I replied. Ethan appeared behind her. "What are they doing here?" "They are here because they love me," I said. Danielle looked at Micah. "You don't need to be involved in this." Micah held up the trust documents. "We are already involved." For a brief moment, I thought she might give up. I thought she might step aside, cry apologize, and say she had made a terrible mistake. Instead, she lifted her chin. "You have no right to be here." I looked at her in disbelief. "I have no right to be in my own house." "You signed it over." "No, I did not." "You did." Micah stepped forward. "Danielle, we have the original trust documents and the county records. The deed you filed is fraudulent." Her face changed. Not into guilt, into anger. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about," Micah said. "I am a real estate attorney." Ethan moved closer to Danielle. "This is a family matter," he said. "You people need to leave." I looked at him. "You people?" He did not answer. Danielle reached for her phone. "Fine," she said. "If you won't leave, I'll call the police." My stomach turned. "You would call the police on me?" "You're trespassing. I am the beneficiary of this property. You're confused." That word again. Confused. Every time she said it, she tried to erase me a little more. Within 15 minutes, Officer Daniel Brooks arrived. He was younger than I expected, maybe in his early 40s, with a calm face and a tired expression. He listened while Danielle spoke first. "My mother moved into assisted living," she explained. "She signed the house over because she couldn't manage it anymore. Now she keeps coming back and making threats." "I have not threatened anyone," I said. Danielle held out a folder. "I have copies of the paperwork." Officer Brooks looked through it. I saw the forged deed. I saw the fake signature. I saw a document with a notary stamp. He turned to me. "Ma'am, do you have any paperwork showing you still own or occupy the property?" Micah handed him the trust documents. The officer looked at them carefully. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then Danielle spoke again. "She has been carrying those old papers around for years. She doesn't understand that she transferred the property after she moved." "That isn't true," I said. The officer looked between us. I could see confusion on his face, and Danielle knew it. She stepped closer to him and lowered her voice. "My mother has been struggling mentally. She gets very upset when she thinks people are taking things from her." I stared at her. "Danielle." She would not look at me. Officer Brooks sighed. "Ma'am, this may be a civil matter." "She is trespassing," Ethan said loudly. "She refuses to leave." "I'm not trespassing," I said. "My belongings are inside. My medication is inside. My legal home is inside." Danielle began to cry. It was not loud crying. It was worse than that. It was controlled, quiet, believable. "I'm scared," she whispered. "She keeps showing up. I don't know what she might do." My heart broke in a way I cannot describe. Not because the officer believed her, because my own daughter had learned exactly how to use my age, my disability and my love for her against me. Officer Brooks looked at Micah. Are you her attorney? I am one of the trustees under the family trust. That still needs to be verified. I understand, Micah said. But you should not arrest her based on a forged deed. Danielle pointed toward me. She is refusing to leave private property. Officer Brooks looked at me. Ma'am, I need you to step away from the door while we sort this out. I can't step, I said softly. I can roll away. He looked embarrassed. I'm sorry. I mean, move back from the entrance. I rolled backward. Danielle watched me from the doorway. Then Ethan whispered something to her. She nodded. Officer Brooks turned back toward me. Ma'am, I'm going to need to detain you temporarily while we investigate. My body went cold. What? It is not a formal arrest yet, he said. But if you refuse to comply, I may have to take you in. I'm not refusing anything. I'm telling you this is my home. Danielle raised her voice. She keeps trying to force her way in. I have not touched the door, I said. But by then, the scene had already shifted. A neighbor stood across the street pretending to check her mail. Another car slowed near the curb, and Officer Brooks reached for the handcuffs. The cuffs were cold against my wrists. That is the part I remember most. Not Danielle's face, not Ethan standing behind her with his arms crossed, not the sound of the neighbors whispering from across the street. I remember the metal. I remember the way Officer Brooks tried to be gentle as he secured my hands behind the sides of my wheelchair. I remember feeling smaller than I had felt in years. Please, I said. I have never been arrested in my life. I understand, he said quietly. This is temporary. But humiliation does not feel temporary when you are sitting in front of your own home while your daughter watches you be treated like a criminal. Danielle pressed a hand to her chest. I didn't want this, she said. I looked at her. You called them. Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not answer. Officer Brooks began moving me toward his patrol car. Then a dark SUV pulled up hard at the curb. Micah stepped out first. Isaiah came around the other side carrying a laptop case and a thick sealed folder. Officer Micah called out, his voice sharp enough to cut through the entire street. Please do not take her anywhere. Officer Brooks turned. Micah walked toward us, holding up the folder. This contains certified trust documents, county property records, and the original deed history for this house. Danielle's face changed. For the first time, she looked frightened. Officer Brooks took the documents. Micah spoke quickly, but clearly. My mother, Lauren Scott, is the lifetime beneficiary of the Scott Carter Family Trust. The trust owns this property. Danielle Scott has no legal authority to transfer, sell, or remove her from this home. The deed she provided is fraudulent. Danielle shook her head. That's not true. Micah looked directly at her. Then why does the county recording show a deed signed on a date when Mama Lauren was in a care facility? The officer's eyes narrowed. Danielle said nothing. Isaiah opened his laptop. I also have recovered audio from the home security system, he said. Ethan stepped forward. You can't play private recordings. Isaiah did not even look at him. The system belongs to the trust. My mother is the beneficiary. The recording was lawfully recovered from equipment installed in her home. Officer Brooks looked uncertain. Micah nodded toward Isaiah. Play it. The first sound that came through the speakers was static. Then Danielle's voice filled the quiet street. We need to get Mom out before the sale closes. No one moved. No one spoke. Ethan's face drained of color. The recording continued. She'll panic, Danielle said. She won't know what to do. Then Ethan's voice. Once the buyer sends the deposit, we'll be fine. Danielle turned toward him. Say something. He stepped back. The recording played a little longer, then ended. The silence afterward was unbearable. Officer Brooks looked at me, then at Danielle, then at the forged deed in his hand. He walked over to my wheelchair. Ms. Scott, he said quietly. I'm sorry. My throat tightened. He removed the cuffs. The moment they came off, Micah reached down and held my hands. His eyes were wet. "I'm sorry we weren't here sooner," he whispered. I shook my head. "You came when I needed you." Officer Brooks turned toward Danielle. "Ma'am, I need you to understand that providing false documents to law enforcement is a serious matter." Danielle began shaking. "I didn't fake anything. Then we will verify everything he said. But based on what I have seen, I cannot treat your mother as the trespasser here." Ethan took Danielle by the arm. "Let's go inside," he muttered. Officer Brooks stopped him. "No one is going anywhere until I have your identification and a full statement." Danielle looked at me. For one brief moment, she seemed like the little girl she used to be. Lost, scared, caught in something too big for her. But then her expression hardened again. "This is your fault," she said. The words cut deeper than any insult. My fault. As if I had forced her to lie. As if I had made her steal my home. As if she had no choice. I looked at her with tears in my eyes. "No, Danielle," I said. "This is the consequence of what you did." Officer Brooks explained that the immediate issue would likely move into civil court because Danielle was residing in the home. He could not simply remove her that day without further orders. But he warned her that the house could not be sold, transferred, or touched until the records were verified. He also took copies of the audio recording and forged deed. By the time the police cars left, Danielle and Ethan had gone back inside. I was still outside, still locked out, but something had changed. For the first time, the truth had been heard by someone besides me, and Danielle knew she could no longer control the story. That night, I stayed with Micah and Isaiah. They lived in a spacious two-story house outside the city, one they had bought together a few years earlier, after their businesses began doing well. Isaiah had remodeled the first floor, so I could stay comfortably whenever I visited. There was a wide hallway, an accessible bathroom, and a guest room with a bed low enough for me to transfer easily. They had thought of everything, and still I felt ashamed. "I should have called you sooner," I said, as Micah helped me settle into the guest room. "You called when you were ready," he answered, "but I let it get this far." Isaiah stood in the doorway. "No," he said firmly. "Danielle let it get this far." I looked down. "It's still hard to hear that." "I know," he said, "but you are not responsible for another adult's choices." The next morning, Micah began filing emergency paperwork. He moved with calm efficiency, making phone calls, printing records, contacting the county office, and preparing a request to freeze any transfer or sale involving my home. Isaiah spent hours reviewing financial data, the camera logs, and every digital trail Danielle might have left behind. By noon, he found something. "Come look at this," he said. On his screen was a bank account statement. The account name read, Caregiver Assistance Services. At first, I did not understand. Then Isaiah explained. Danielle had opened the account under the appearance of receiving money for helping care for me. But the deposits were not payments from any state program or insurance company. They came from a private buyer. One deposit was for $15,000. Another was for $10,000. And a third payment, marked Initial Property Hold, was for $5,000. My breath caught. She took money already. Micah looked at the records. She accepted a deposit from a buyer, but she could not sell the house. She knew that he said. That is why she needed to get you out first. She needed to make it appear vacant and transferred. I stared at the screen. $25,000. That was what my daughter had accepted in exchange for pretending I no longer belonged in my own home. Isaiah clicked again. There's more. He showed us payments leaving the account. Large transfers to a business debt collection company, a late mortgage payment, a credit card balance, and several transfers to Ethan. Micah leaned back in his chair. This is bigger than the house, he said. I felt suddenly tired. Then, what else is there, debt? He said. A lot of it. Over the next several days, pieces of the truth came together. Danielle and Ethan had been drowning financially. Ethan's business had failed more than a year earlier. though they had told everyone it was only a temporary setback. He had borrowed money to keep his transportation company alive. When the contracts fell through, he was left with loans he could not repay. Danielle had been working extra shifts, taking on side jobs, and quietly falling behind on bills. But instead of asking me for help, she had decided my house was the answer. Not because it belonged to her, because she believed she deserved it. I thought about that for a long time. I could have understood desperation. I could have understood fear. I could even have understood someone making one terrible choice under pressure. But this had not been one choice. It had been months of planning, months of hiding mail, isolating me, lying to neighbors, disconnecting cameras, forging documents, and building a story that painted me as confused. One evening, Micah came into my room carrying a folder. "We need to talk about what happens next," he said. I knew what he meant. "Do I press charges?" "That is one option," he said carefully. "Forgery, false reporting, financial fraud. The police may investigate regardless, especially because they were given false information." I looked out the window. The sun was setting behind the trees. "I don't want to destroy her." Micah sat beside me. "Mama Lauren holding her accountable is not destroying her. But she's my daughter." "Yes," he said. "And you are still her mother." That is why this hurts so much. I pressed my hands together. I want my house back. I want the money returned. I want the truth on record. And if the court gives you the option of stronger consequences, I thought of Danielle standing in the doorway telling me I had no right to come inside. I thought of the cuffs. I thought of her saying this was my fault. Then I thought of her as a little girl, asleep beside me after a nightmare. "I don't know yet," I whispered. Micah nodded. "You don't have to decide tonight." But while I struggled with the question of mercy, Danielle was still inside my house, still surrounded by my furniture, still sleeping in a bedroom that had once held my wedding photos and my mother's old cedar chest. And every day she stayed there, I felt another piece of my life being held hostage. The full truth about Ethan's debts came out during the week before the court hearing. Micah had requested financial records connected to the buyer's deposits, and once the money trail began to unfold, there was no hiding it. Ethan had started a small transportation company 2 years earlier. At first, things looked promising. He leased 3 vans, hired drivers, and signed a contract to deliver medical supplies to clinics around Central Ohio. Danielle had been proud of him. She had posted photos online of the business logo, the vans, and Ethan standing in front of a warehouse with his arms crossed like a man who had finally made it. But the contract did not last. The clinics changed providers. Fuel prices rose. 2 drivers quit. One of the vans was damaged in an accident. Ethan borrowed more money to keep going. Then more. By the time the company collapsed, he owed lenders, vendors, insurance companies, and credit card companies more than they could possibly repay. Danielle knew. She had known for months. And instead of telling me the truth, she had come into my home with a plan already forming in her mind. One afternoon, Isaiah found a message thread between Danielle and Ethan that had been backed up through the old home computer. He did not want to show it to me, but I told him I needed to know. The messages were short, practical, cold. "Danielle Mom's house is the only thing with enough value. Ethan." "She won't agree, Danielle." "She doesn't have to if we do it right." "Ethan." "What about Micah, Danielle?" "He won't know until it's done." I read those words over and over. "She doesn't have to if we do it right." That was when something inside me finally broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. I just sat there staring at the screen while tears rolled down my face. I didn't raise her to think like this. I said, Micah sat beside me, "You raised her to know better." That sentence hurt because it was true. Danielle knew right from wrong. She was not a child. She was not helpless. She knew exactly what she was doing. The next discovery hurt even more. Isaiah found transfers from a savings account I had created years earlier for Danielle's son Mason. When he was born, I began putting a small amount aside every month. Sometimes it was only $20, sometimes $50. On birthdays, holidays, or whenever I got a tax refund, I added more. It was not a fortune, but it was enough to help him with college trade school or whatever future he chose. The account had been linked to documents Danielle accessed while sorting my mail and paperwork. Over the last year, she had withdrawn nearly $9,000. The money had gone toward Ethan's debts. I stared at the account statement until the numbers blurred. "That was for Mason," I whispered. "I know," Isaiah said softly. "That was for his future." Micah looked down. "We can include it in the court filing." I shook my head slowly. "No, not yet." He looked surprised. "Why not?" "Because I want to hear her say it to my face." The night before the hearing, Danielle asked to meet me. She sent a message through Micah. "Please, I need to talk to Mom alone." Micah did not want me to go. Neither did Isaiah. But I told them I had spent too many years avoiding hard conversations with my daughter. This time, I would not run. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the courthouse. Danielle arrived late. She looked different. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her hair was pulled into a careless ponytail. There were dark circles beneath her eyes. For a moment, I felt a wave of sadness. Not because I had forgotten what she did, because I had not. She sat across from me and wrapped both hands around a paper cup. "Mom," she said, "I never wanted it to go this far." I looked at her. "Then why did it?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because Ethan was drowning." "We were drowning. I didn't know what else to do. You could have told me. You would have said no. You never asked." She looked away. "I knew you had the house. I knew it was worth enough to save us. My home was not yours to use. You helped Micah and Isaiah all those years." There it was. The wound she had carried for decades. I felt my chest tighten. "This is not about them." "It is always about them," she said, suddenly angry. "You always had time for them. You always had money for them. You always had patience for them." "Danielle, you made them feel like sons. You made them important. They were children who lost their mother. And I lost mine too," she snapped. The words silenced me. For a moment, I saw the little girl she had been. The girl who watched me hug two grieving boys. The girl who had felt forgotten, even while sitting at my kitchen table. "I am sorry if I made you feel unseen," I said quietly. "I am sorry for every time I was too tired to listen. But you did not lose me, Danielle. You pushed me away." She shook her head. "You chose them." "No," I said. "I chose to love them. That did not mean I loved you less." Her tears began to fall, but then she wiped them away and said something that made me understand how far gone she was. "I still think you owe me." I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "No, baby. I do not owe you my home because you're angry about your childhood." She stood abruptly. "You're going to ruin my life." I watched her walk away, and for the first time, I understood that some people would rather blame you for their choices than face what they have done. The morning of the hearing, I woke before sunrise. For years, I had imagined courtrooms as places where everything became clear, where truth walked in, stood under bright lights, and made people understand. But as I sat in Micah's guest room staring at the pale blue light coming through the window, I knew real life was not that simple. Truth had to be carried. It had to be protected. It had to be spoken, even when your voice shook. Micah drove us to this courthouse. Isaiah sat in the back beside me, holding a folder full of evidence. Neither of them talked much. They knew I was afraid. Not of the judge, not of the paperwork. I was afraid of seeing Danielle again. We waited in a hallway outside the courtroom. Danielle arrived with Ethan and a lawyer I had never seen before. When she spotted me, she stopped. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked over. "Can we talk?" she asked. Micah stepped forward. "She doesn't need to speak to you." "It's okay," I said. We moved to a quiet corner near the elevator. Danielle looked exhausted. Her anger from the coffee shop was gone. In its place was something heavier. Fear. I didn't sleep, she said. Neither did I. She looked down at my wheelchair. I hate that this happened. You made it happen. I know. I waited. She pressed her lips together. I was so angry at you for so long. I know that now. You always talked about how proud you were of Micah and Isaiah. I was proud of you too. But you didn't say it the same way. Her voice cracked. I thought back to all the years when she had pulled away. The phone calls she never returned, the holidays she cut short, the tension that seemed to grow whenever Micah or Isaiah were around. Maybe I had been too busy trying to keep peace to ask why there was no peace. Danielle, I said gently, I should have asked more questions when you were younger. I should have made room for you to tell me what hurt. Her eyes lifted. For a second, I saw hope in them. Then I continued, but nothing you felt gave you the right to take my home. Her face closed again. You don't understand what it was like. Then tell me. You were everybody's hero, she said. The woman in the wheelchair who adopted 2 boys. People always talked about you like you were perfect. I was not perfect. But you were strong, she said. And I always felt like I was the selfish one if I complained. I nodded slowly. That must have been lonely. She looked surprised that I said it. It was, she whispered. For a moment, I wanted to reach across and hold her hand. Then I remembered the locked door. I remembered the police car. I remembered the recording of her saying, I would panic. I can understand your loneliness, I said. I can even forgive you someday for the pain you carried. But I cannot pretend this was only about pain. Danielle looked away. It was about money too. Yes. And Ethan. Yes. And me being scared. Yes. She swallowed. I didn't think it would turn into all this. You had me removed from my home. I thought once it was sold we could pay off the debt and fix things. With what? An apology. She flinched. I don't know. That is the problem, I said. You did not think past yourself. She began crying again. This time the tears looked real. But I had learned that real tears did not always mean real remorse. I'm sorry, she whispered. I waited. I'm sorry, she said again, for what? She looked at me, and silence stretched between us. For the forged signature, for the stolen money, for locking me out, for calling the police, for making me feel crazy in front of strangers. She could not say it, and because she could not say it, I knew she still did not fully understand. The courtroom door opened. A clerk called our case. Danielle looked at me one last time. Please don't ruin everything, she said. I felt something settle inside me. Not rage, not revenge, clarity. I didn't ruin everything I said, but I will not keep protecting you from what you did. She walked away. Micah came to my side. You okay? He asked. No, I said honestly. Then I took a breath. But I'm ready. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. There were no dramatic wooden benches filled with spectators, no television cameras, no music swelling in the background. Just a judge, a clerk, a few attorneys, and the quiet sound of papers turning. But for me, it felt like the most important room in the world. Micah spoke first. He explained that he was not representing me as my attorney in the formal sense for the hearing, but he had helped organize the trust documents and assist the legal team we had hired. The attorney spoke clearly about the Scott Carter Family Trust. The house had been placed into the trust years earlier. I had the right to live there for life. Micah and Isaiah were successor trustees, with the power to protect the property if I were pressured or exploited. Danielle had no authority to transfer the property, no authority to sell it, no authority to remove me. Then the forged deed was presented. The judge examined the signature. A notary representative testified that the stamp number on the document had not been used by that notary on the date listed. The county record showed inconsistencies in the filing. The handwriting expert's preliminary opinion stated that the signature did not match mine. Danielle sat very still. Ethan kept his head lowered. Then Isaiah presented the digital evidence, the security system logs, the manual disconnection from the cloud, the recovered audio recordings, the deleted files that had been restored from backup, the messages between Danielle and Ethan, the bank records showing deposits from the potential buyer, the transfers to Ethan's debts, and finally, the withdrawals from Mason's education fund. When that last part was mentioned, Danielle's face crumpled. She looked at me. I did not look away. I wanted her to see that I knew. Not because I wanted to shame her, because I wanted her to understand that lies do not disappear just because someone hides them well. Her lawyer argued that Danielle had been under extreme financial stress. He said she believed she was acting in the family's best interest. He said the documents were prepared in confusion and that Ethan had influenced many of the decisions. But the judge did not seem convinced. Stress was not permission. Fear was not permission. Marriage was not permission. The judge ruled that the transfer document was invalid. The home remained protected under the Scott Carter Family Trust. All pending sale activity was frozen. Danielle was ordered to account for the buyer's deposit funds and return any money that had been improperly taken. The court also issued an order preventing Danielle and Ethan from selling borrowing against or interfering with the property. As for the criminal allegations, the judge stated that the evidence would be referred to the proper authorities for further review. Danielle began to cry. Ethan whispered something to his lawyer. I sat quietly in my wheelchair, staring at the front wall of the courtroom. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. The judge looked at me. Ms. Scott, she said you have the right to seek the strongest available remedies. Everyone turned toward me. Micah's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. I thought about all the nights I had spent crying in the motel. I thought about the cuffs on my wrists. I thought about Danielle calling me confused. Part of me wanted to say yes, take everything, make her feel what I felt. But then I thought about Mason. I thought about the little boy who had once slept on my couch with a blanket over his head because he was afraid of thunderstorms. I thought about what it meant to end a cycle instead of feeding one. So I spoke. I want my home protected, I said. I want the money returned. I want the truth to stay in the record so no one can ever say this was a misunderstanding. The judge nodded. And beyond that, I looked at Danielle. She was crying quietly now. I want her to be accountable, I said. But I do not want revenge to become the only thing left in this family. Danielle covered her face with both hands. Ethan did not touch her. That told me more than anything else could have. Outside the courtroom, Officer Daniel Brooks was waiting near the hallway. He had come because he needed to provide a statement regarding the day he detained me. When he saw me, he stepped forward. Ms. Scott. He said I wanted to apologize again. You did what you thought you had to do, I said. I should have looked harder. You did look harder eventually. He nodded. Then he looked toward Danielle, who was standing several feet away with her lawyer. She made you sound helpless, he said quietly. I looked down at my hands. I have been underestimated my whole life, I said. I suppose I should be used to it, but you shouldn't have to be. No, I should not have, and neither should anyone else. 3 weeks later, I returned home. Micah and Isaiah came with me. The locks had been changed again this time by a locksmith hired through the trust. The for sale sign was gone. Ethan and Danielle had moved out 2 days before. When the door opened, I sat still for a moment. The house smelled different, stale, like closed windows, old takeout, and furniture that had been moved too many times. The living room was half empty. My favorite lamp was missing. Several family photographs had been taken down and stacked in a box near the hallway. But the house was still standing. My house. I rolled inside slowly. The first thing I saw was the mark on the wall where Danielle had moved my framed graduation photo. I had kept that picture there since the day I completed my certification program at the community center. I touched the empty space. Micah stood beside me. "We'll put everything back," he said. And they did. Over the next few weeks, Micah and Isaiah helped me reclaim every room. They found my belongings in a storage unit Danielle had rented under Ethan's name. My photo albums, my blue quilt, my old recipe box, my mother's cedar chest, my medication organizer, even the little ceramic bird Danielle had made for me in elementary school. Isaiah hired a contractor to repair the ramp outside and widen the bathroom doorway. Micah made sure every document was stored safely. They did not treat me like I was broken. They asked what I wanted, where I wanted things placed, which photos mattered most, whether I wanted the couch closer to the window. Small questions. But after months of having decisions taken from me, each question felt like a gift. One afternoon, Isaiah hung a new camera beside the front door. "This one has triple backup," he said. "Nobody can disconnect it without alerts going to 3 different places." I smiled. "You make it sound like I'm running a fortress." "You are," he replied. "A fortress with good cookies." Micah laughed. For the first time in a long time, I laughed too. Danielle's legal situation continued. She was ordered to cooperate with the financial investigation and repay the funds she had taken. Ethan separated from her shortly after the hearing. I heard through relatives that he blamed her for everything. That did not surprise me. Men like Ethan often teach women to make desperate choices, then step back when consequences arrive. But Danielle had made her own decisions, and she would have to live with them. 3 months passed before I received her letter. It arrived in a plain white envelope with her handwriting on the front. For several hours, I could not bring myself to open it. Then, one evening after dinner, I sat by the window and unfolded it. The letter was not perfect. It did not erase anything. But it was the first time Danielle wrote without blaming anyone else. She said she had spent years turning every disappointment into proof that I loved her less. She admitted she had allowed jealousy to become bitterness. She admitted she had been ashamed of what she did, but more ashamed that it took losing everything to see it clearly. At the end, she wrote, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I only want you to know that I finally understand what I did to you." I read the letter twice. Then I folded it and placed it in my desk drawer. I did not call her. I did not tear it up. I simply let it sit there. Because forgiveness is not a door someone can force open. It is a path. And sometimes it takes a long time before you are ready to walk it. Months later, Micah, Isaiah, and I started something new. We created the Lauren Scott Accessible Home Fund. The program helped disabled women, foster parents, and older caregivers make their homes safer and more accessible. We partnered with local organizations to build ramps, repair bathrooms, install security systems, and provide emergency housing assistance. I wanted other women to know they were not alone. I wanted them to understand that needing help did not mean giving up control. I wanted them to know that families should never use love as a weapon. One warm evening, I sat on my front porch while Micah and Isaiah worked in the yard. They were arguing over whether the new garden lights were too bright. Their voices drifted through the air, playful and familiar. For a moment, I looked at the empty chair beside me, the one Danielle used to sit in when she visited as a teenager. I felt sadness, but not the kind that destroys you, the kind that reminds you that you survived something you never deserved. I still did not know whether I would forgive Danielle completely. Maybe one day, maybe not. But I knew this much. She had tried to make me feel powerless. Instead, she reminded me how strong I had always been. Life lesson. There is a painful truth many women learn only after years of giving everything to the people they love. Kindness without boundaries can be mistaken for weakness. Lauren loved her daughter deeply. She opened her home, her heart, and her life when Danielle said she needed help. But love should never require someone to surrender their dignity, safety voice, or home. Sometimes the people closest to us carry wounds we cannot see. Danielle's jealousy did not begin the day she forged a document or called the police. It had been growing quietly for years. But pain may explain someone's behavior, it never excuses cruelty. Lauren's strength was not in destroying her daughter. It was in telling the truth. It was in refusing to accept lies simply because they came from family. It was in choosing accountability without letting bitterness control her heart. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not pretending nothing happened. And forgiveness is not a reward someone receives before they take responsibility. Real healing begins when we stop confusing love with permission. You can love someone and still say no. You can care about someone and still protect yourself. You can forgive someday and still require them to face the consequences of what they did. And sometimes the family who saves you is not only the family you were born into. Sometimes it is the people who stand beside you when everyone else tries to make you feel alone. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Do you think Lauren should forgive Danielle one day, or should she keep her distance forever? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more emotional family stories. Lauren's story reminds us that love is not supposed to cost us our dignity. We can open our homes, share our sacrifices, and forgive old wounds, but no one, not even family, has the right to take our safety, our voice, or the life we worked so hard to build. Sometimes the deepest betrayals come from the people we spent years protecting. That is what makes them so painful. Lauren did not just lose access to a house. She was forced to face the heartbreaking truth that her own daughter had mistaken kindness for weakness and love for entitlement. But Lauren's strength was not found in screaming, seeking revenge, or trying to destroy Danielle in return. Her strength came from standing in the truth, protecting herself, and refusing to let guilt make her surrender what was rightfully hers. This story also teaches us that boundaries are not cruelty. Saying no does not mean you do not love someone. Asking for accountability does not mean you are heartless. And choosing peace does not mean allowing someone to hurt you again. Real forgiveness can be beautiful, but it cannot be forced. It must come after honesty, responsibility, and changed behavior. Lauren also discovered something important. Family is not only defined by blood. True family is made up of the people who show up when life becomes difficult. The people who believe you when others try to silence you, who protect you when you feel powerless, and who remind you of your worth when you begin to forget it yourself. No matter your age, your health, or what others may try to make you believe, your life still has value. Your voice still matters. Your home, your choices, and your dignity deserve to be respected. What did you think of Lauren's decision? Do you believe she should forgive Danielle someday? Or should she keep her distance and protect her peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would truly love to hear your perspective. And if this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more powerful family stories about courage, betrayal, healing, and finding strength when it matters most.